Okay, thanks for tuning in. My talk will be about the development of my art career with some process images thrown in for good measure. The majority of the images will be from after 2003, but I'll show highlights leading up to that year. In 2003, it kind of marked a shift in my life, and it resulted in a kind of a fruitful decade that followed. I was raised in Anacortes, Washington, and that's where I live today. Oops. There we go. Here I am in 1980 at the University of Washington. I was in my final year of undergraduate school at the UW. I was in the sculpture program doing bronze casting and metal fabrication. And this is a piece I made out of bar stock. And after that, after graduating from the UW, I attended graduate school at Tyler School of Art, where I got a degree in sculpture in 1983. I created this bed piece near the completion of my first year at Tyler. This was the first time I used mesh in my work. I needed a material to use as a bed sheet, but I didn't want to use fabric. But I still wanted something sheer and semi-transparent. And so I went out to a local hardware store and bought some 36-inch aluminum insect screening. But I needed the sheet to be 5 feet wide. So I ended up attaching two pieces of screen together by twisting frayed wires. And that's still the way I connect mesh together today. I also needed pillow forms, so I made them out of the same material. So it also kind of taught me that you can make forms out of the screening. But after that, right after I made that bed piece, I did these two transition pieces, and this was also at Tyler. The one on the left was made out of wire and welding rods. I just started connecting the rods together with wire and discovered that I enjoyed that kind of loose, repetitive process more than I did doing metal fabrication. I like the direct hands-on approach to art making. The piece on the right was the first piece I made out of mesh, and it was the beginning of a series of work made out of strips of insect screening. And this image shows two pieces that were in my MFA thesis show at Tyler. The piece on the left was purchased in my first Philadelphia commercial gallery exhibition at the Marion Locks Gallery. It was later donated to the Woodmere Art Museum in Philly. Most of my thesis show is made up of pieces I made out of insect screening. At this point, all I needed were rolls of mesh and the scissors and linesman pliers to make sculpture. The simplicity of the approach appealed to me and also made life as an artist following graduate school a little bit easier. It was an inexpensive material. I didn't need elaborate tools, and I didn't need a large studio to make sculptures in. Plus, the pieces that I made were light. I mean, what more could I ask for? This was taken in 1985 at an exhibition I had at the Fleischer Art Memorial in Philadelphia. Everything in the show is made out of insect screening that was either airbrushed or it was just plain aluminum screen. The work was inspired by nature forms, and that's still the way I work today and what inspires my work. A year later, I became the gallery coordinator at Fleischer, and I remained at Fleischer coordinating gallery activities for 8 years. That's where I met my wife, Eve, and she was an administrative assistant there. We left Philadelphia and moved back to the Pacific Northwest in 1994. Eve passed away from lung cancer in January of 2017. And this is a 1992 solo exhibition that took place at Locks Gallery in Philadelphia. At this point, I was more of a mixed media sculptor. The stone-like pieces were made out of hydrocal. The 15 black forms were rubbed with graphite, and the white ones were rubbed with shoe polish, white shoe polish. I also had several plumb bob-like pieces surfaced with various materials. The models for the stone pieces were Fidalgo Island beach pebbles. That's where Anacortes is, on Fidalgo Island. And this is the same lock show and showing some of the persona pieces. And they were all identical forms that I cast, but I put a different surface on them. And the one on the right was from glass that was broken out of a hatchback Barracuda. And when I would walk to work quite a bit when I was working at Fleischer. And I would see cars that were broken into and had piles of glass next to the window. And I started collecting some of that. In this case, it was a hatchback Barracuda. After moving to Washington, I started working with mesh again. The piece here is called Falling Star. It was purchased by the Seattle Art Museum after I won the Betty Bowen Memorial Award in 1995. That was sponsored by the Seattle Art Museum. The piece was made of frayed charcoal, aluminum, and bronze mesh. In 1999, I was invited to do a solo exhibition at the Whatcom Art Museum Arco building. It featured over 15 years of work that I had accumulated. I installed it like an installation, which included a central sand mass made out of silica sand, broken auto glass, pins, and an egg-like nest of forms. Some of the forms were broken, giving the impression that they were hatchlings that were inhabiting the space. The sand mass was 12 feet across. The exhibition helped reestablish my art career and got me connected with another gallery in Philadelphia, the Snyderman Works Gallery. This is another view of the exhibition, which I called Un/Natural World. In 2002, I was invited to an installation at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And this is after someone from the aquarium saw my work at the Arco building at the Whatcom Museum. At this time, I was working a lot with cut and reconstructed gourds. I was growing my own gourds and drying them and making art out of them. And I was surfacing them with glass frit. So I was back working more of mixed media stuff. And this is a 2002 solo exhibition I had at the Busch Barn Art Center in Salem, Oregon. The central figurative piece was made out of charcoal screen with white and black silicone embedded in the mesh. When I started to put this talk together, I realized that I actually made this central piece for a show that was going to be at the Museum of Art and Design in New York, but that show was canceled. However, the piece was well used in future installations. In 2003, I had cancer treatment, and this marked kind of that shift in my life. I didn't work on my artwork for about 4 months, and when I started working again, I started making pieces out of strips of aluminum screening, much like I did in my last year of graduate school. The piece here was the first one I did, and it was the beginning of the Ether series, which featured suspended forms made out of charcoal, aluminum, and bronze mesh. They had a figurative and contemplative presence to them. They had little color, and the fabrication technique was repetitive twisting together of frayed mesh wires. The process was very meditative. This is Ether number 3, which I made in 2004. It was 84 inches tall and about 19 inches wide, and it was all made out of charcoal aluminum screen. So it's a very light material. But the interior baffles supported the outer form, and it was made out of charcoal mesh. And it was purchased by the Landmark Bank from the SOFA Chicago exhibition. My work was represented at SOFA by Snyderman Works Gallery, and I had the opportunity to show there for about 10 years in a row. This piece called Symbia was made in 2004, and it was shown at the 4th annual Cheongju International Craft Biennale. The theme of the exhibition was hide and reveal, and Symbia was a perfect fit for the theme. And it won a gold prize there that year. Here I am at the Cheongju Biennial. These bronze mesh pieces are from 2005. The one on the left has a gourd inside, which I burned dots in using a wood burning tool. They were exhibited in one of the first basketry shows I was ever in. The show was called Material Content, Basketry Sculpture in the 21st Century, and it was held at the Craft Alliance in St. Louis. These two are also from 2005 and are in the Lieberman Basketry collection. The piece on the left is now a promised gift to the Museum of Art and Design in New York. The bronze piece on the right also has a gourd inside, and that I also use the wood burning tool on. This image shows an installation piece I did for a 2006 solo exhibition titled Entering Ether. It was held at the Museum of Art Museum of Northwest Art. Excuse me, I gotta take a drink. Museum of Northwest Art, which is about 15 minutes from where I live. The installation pictured here was created out of monofilament strung from the second floor railing every 2 inches, and then tied to a series of lead weights which pulled the monofilament taut. Below was a mound of silica sand broken out of glass pins and glass frit. I worked with 15 museum volunteers to create the installation, which had several site-specific pieces done. This is a shot looking down from the second floor of the museum. Light played upon the monofilament as one moved around the piece, kind of animating it. This is another view of the Mona installation. It had some studio pieces that were in the back there, and several other pieces that I did specifically for the show. On the right side of the photograph, I stretched monofilament from wall to wall, creating a wave-like form, supporting, and it supported frayed screening and black screen balls, which are very light. On the left side, I created a wall installation I titled Industrial Nature and the Big Bang. It was made out of circles of overlapping fiberglass mesh and ball forms made out of frayed mesh and stretched monofilament and strips of charcoal aluminum mesh. Later, I did several versions of this piece. This is an installation I did in 2007 in what was at the time called the Raw Space at SoFi Chicago. I titled the piece Groundswell. The piece on the left was called Symbiote Red, and it was made out of bronze mesh. And the interior form is made out of charcoal aluminum screening. It's in the collection of Swedish Hospital. Ether number 12 on the right was made out of bronze and charcoal aluminum mesh and frayed brass wire. It's part of the Skagit Valley College permanent collection and hangs in the entry lobby of the school's art department. This image was taken in 2008 at the LA Municipal Art Gallery. The exhibition was titled Patterns and Rhythms. Here is an installation view at the 2007 Cheongju International Craft Biennale. After I had won the gold prize, they asked me to come back 2 years later. I titled the piece Between Earth and Sky. I shipped the central figurative piece over to Cheongju and created the rest of the installation on site. It was a great experience to work behind the scenes at the biennial. I worked on that for about 3 days. And 10 days after I received the piece back from Korea, I sent it to the University of Pennsylvania for an installation at the university's Arthur Ross Gallery. The exhibition was part of a citywide international fiber biennial organized by Snyderman Works Gallery. In 2008, I installed a larger version of Industrial Nature and the Big Bang at the Bellevue Arts Museum. And my friend Glo Lamson, who's here today actually, helped me with the installation. This is another view of the installation. Circles are made out of overlapping fiberglass mesh. And here I am stretching monofilament from one side to the other. And still attaching monofilament. And here's the finished Bellevue Arts Museum installation. In 2009, I recreated the Big Bang at the University of Idaho, the Pritchard Gallery. I altered it to accommodate the space. I also did the first version of a wall installation I called Constellation Maker. That's on the right side of the screen. After the Pritchard exhibition, I had one more chance to recreate the Big Bang at the Skagit Valley College Art Gallery. In 2009, I exhibited 7 suspended works at the Perelman Center for Advanced Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. The grouping was later purchased by the Perelman Center and is now on permanent display there. The pieces are all, some of them are stainless steel and some bronze mesh. There's some glass frit in there and some charcoal aluminum mesh. This is an image of Constellation Maker, the second version I did, which was installed in a solo exhibition called Un/Natural Construct at the Bingham Gallery at the University of Missouri. I worked with fiber students from Joe Staley's fiber class during a 5-day workshop to create several installations. I think I had about 9 in all, but they were all created there at the university. I did ship quite a few of the colored elements in this piece there, but we added to it too. And this is another wall installations I did there at the university. And there's a couple more. And that's a more detailed shot of the piece that was on the right in the last slide. And this is a 2010 installation view of a show I had at the Piscini LaBelle Gallery in Seattle. The central piece was made out of stretch monofilament, which was attached to a steel weight covered by silica sand and blue glass frit. And light kind of played upon the monofilament as you walked around the piece. And this was taken in 2011 exhibition at the Anchor Art Space, which was kind of an alternative space in Anacortes, my hometown. It featured another version of Constellation Maker. And on the right is a group of works I called Amoeba Gathering. And it was the first series I did using flame painting, as where I use a propane and butane torch to color and make patterns on stainless steel mesh. I started using the heat treating process after metal basketry artist Marilyn Moore suggested I try a torch on stainless steel. And so I've been doing that ever since. So, and it really added a whole nother thing to my work. This was also taken at the same Anchor Art Space exhibition. And this was a commission I did for the Washington State Arts Commission at a high school in Bremerton, Washington. I made 4 suspended pieces out of bronze mesh. And then I created a long wall hanging over the windows that was made out of bronze mesh. And the ball forms are made out of half spheres of styrofoam, which were surfaced with glass frit. And this is in 2010, and I was one of 5 American artists invited to be in the 13th Triennial of Tapestry in Łódź, Poland. And here I am in front of my work that's on the left. And this is more of a detailed shot of that piece. I made 225 bronze mesh pillow-like forms and created 9 grids. And there were also small circles of origami paper that I glued to the mesh via clear silicone. And then I had small balls of glass frit. The piece was about color, pattern, and design. And now I'm just going to throw in some process shots here. This is basically how I make a piece, or I made a piece like that. And this is a jig I made to place the colored paper into. And then I applied silicone to the circles. And then I pressed the square of mesh into the silicone. And it kind of creates these dot-like like beading look to it. And it, it glues the paper to the surface and create a bead-like impression. And then I made, I put wire into these styrofoam balls, and then I used silicone, applied that to the styrofoam, and then roll that around in the glass frit, and then making these little semi-ball forms. And then I attach that to the mesh and complete the little little pillow-like shapes. And just twisting it all together with my little flat nose pliers. And this is like the piece I would make doing that, using that template. And this is a bronze mesh piece. The blue and green forms are made out of glass, frit, and silicone. And it's on permanent display at the Anacortes Island Hospital waiting room. And these are two suspended pieces that were purchased by very good friends of mine, who one is here joining us today. They generously donated to the Fuller Craft Museum. They were made out of charcoal aluminum mesh. Frayed brass mesh catches the light and kind of glow yellow, and the mesh of brass wire also holds randomly placed blue frit balls in suspension. And I'm going to show you process shots, how I made a piece that was sort of similar to these. And first I started by cutting the mesh, and this is charcoal aluminum mesh, and making strips that were probably about 20 feet long. So I prepare all that first. And this is my a photo of my studio stool I nailed to a turntable. And I use that to attach the strip of mesh to. And there it is attached to a foam core circle that's kind of around the largest size of the piece. And I put a pin there to kind of mark the spot. And then I start attaching it with my linesman's pliers. And I mark the spot because these are made by, you have to go out just a certain increment, and you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Otherwise the form is going to look pretty bad. And so when you get to where the pin is, then I know to either make it a little bit further out or a little bit further in. And I have this jig on the side that can raise and lower. That way I can kind of keep going up while I'm working on the piece. And there I am kind of twisting the wires together and butting one of the strips up against another one. And it was kind of I have a little bit of a story about that. I had a piece that was at SOFA, New York. And this was around probably 2006, something like that. And the piece I had there was this concert pianist that was very interested in it. But she was hesitant because she noticed the seams that, where I connect one strip to another. At first, I was actually connecting those physically by twisting, and it made a little darker area, darker line. And so what I thought for a minute, and I thought, well, those don't really have to be there. So I ended up taking the piece up to the second floor of SOFA, New York, and taking the little tiny seams out, and she ended up buying the piece. And this is kind of the finished part of the bottom part of the piece. And then I turned it over, and then I kept going up. And this is how I make these little frit ball forms. I first start with some brass wire or any type of wire and twist it together, make a little loop. Then I apply silicone to that. And this is clear silicone. And then I press it into the glass frit, and that glues to the glass frit, and I make these little frit balls. And then I dry them on my adapted tomato rack. Just let them set up. And I kind of fray off the wires, in this case, because I wanted it to be held in suspension in the piece. And there I have all my material ready for use. There I am fraying off more screening. I kind of deconstruct some screening. In this case, it's brass. And then I put that into the cavity of the piece, and also insert the little blue frit balls with the frayed edges. but all that just kind of holds it in place. I mean, it doesn't really move around once you get it in there. And here I've inserted the interior part of that into the outer casing. And I use bamboo skewers to kind of hold it while I use the little small of the charcoal aluminum wires to actually attach the inside form to the outside form. And then I started putting it together, going up at near the same time. And here I am at the top, adding a little frit ball there and using a heavier gauge wire and making these tentacle forms at the top. And this is the piece that I showed the process shots. That's the middle piece there. And it resides in a home of a good friend of mine in Anacortes. And this piece is made out of the flame painted stainless steel mesh. And now I'm going to show some process shots on this one too. First, I cut stainless steel mesh squares out of it, all equal size. And then I use a torch to burn the patterning on, in this case, the circles. And I do have, this is actually, this is a handheld torch, but I have one that's connected to a 5-gallon like barbecue propane tank. But if you, for the color, if the mesh is turning orange, it means it's going to be kind of blue. So that's what I'm doing here. The line I'm doing around the outside of the circle is actually a little hotter, so that's why there's a color difference. And then I'm adding some dot forms. And then I'm finally kind of coloring in with the lowest heat, which makes it more of an amber kind of color. And I wanted to put silicone in the circle areas. And so I applied silicone to wax paper. And then I pressed that through the mesh and let that dry. And then I'm attaching frit balls, which were made out of the gluing orange frit to styrofoam balls, like I did in that other piece. And then connecting it together with my little pliers. And I made these kind of tentacle forms coming out of the center of those pieces, and I'm wrapping a heavier gauge copper wire to that. And there I am using wire to attach all of these these kind of pillow-like forms. And there I'm just connecting, finishing connecting the whole piece together. And that's looking down on the inside of the piece. And this is a picture of a 2012 solo exhibition I had at the Shack Arts Center. I called the show Mesh, and it featured several years of work, but everything in it had something to do with mesh. And that's just another shot of the exhibition. And that was one of the first shows I think they had at the new Shack Arts Center building. And that's another shot of the Shack exhibition. And here I am working on a 2013 installation at the Chattanooga Aquarium. And it was part of a new jellyfish display there. And the aquarium invited 3 or 4 artists to do installations, much like the one I did at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And that's where they got the idea to do that at the Chattanooga one. And that's how they knew about my work. This is a shot of the finished installation. This is a commission I did for the technical high school near Skagit Valley College. And it's the final resting place for Constellation Maker, which I really had no idea anyone would ever buy it, but the technical school did, so I was thrilled with that. And also there's 3 of the bronze mesh pieces on the left, and there's another piece out of charcoal aluminum mesh that's down the corridor at the end there at the window. And these are 2 wall grids, and it's part of a 7-part commission I made for Seattle City Light, and it was called Electrifying the Grid. And this is the installation there, showing all 7 of the panels. And here's another Washington State Art Commission project I did for an elementary school in Snohomish County. I did 4 grid pieces there on the back wall, which are 4 by 4 foot each. And then I did 7 suspended pieces, also kind of made out of the same, those little pillow forms, but done more in a 3-dimensional way. And this is looking down on the wall grids. This is a commission I did for Swedish Hospital in Edmonds. The 9 forms are made out of flame painted stainless steel mesh. Here's an image of various kind of sea creature-like basketry forms, and these are made out of the flame painted stainless steel and coated copper wire. When I was doing these, I just wanted to make sure I did a different pattern on the pieces, and they were kind of randomly cut squares. You just cut out sections on the outer edges of it. And so in putting them together, they just come out to be different with a hole in the middle. I've made various stainless steel vessel pieces. And this is one called Primordial Vessel, and it was exhibited at the Art in the Embassy program in Albania. And I've created theme-based pieces. Here are 2 teapot forms that I've made. I think I made 5 or 6 teapots for various invitational shows, and they're kind of challenging to do, and it's a good way to kind of explore form. And this piece was made for a goblet show at Mobilia Gallery, and it was later donated to the Museum of Art and Design in New York, along with select other works from the Mobilia show. I made this piece for an exhibition put on by Peters Valley Art Center. The theme was to create a work inspired by a Greek drinking vessel called a calyx. I made these vessels back in 2013, and they were made out of stainless steel mesh with black and clear silicone embedded in the mesh. And these are also 2 stainless steel and silicone vessels. The blue dots on the one on the left, that was made by mixing powdered pigment with clear silicone and then pressing it through the mesh. And the white on the right-hand side, that comes directly out of the tube and pressed through the mesh. And this piece was made in 2013. I called it Atomic Vessel. And it was exhibited at the Newcastle Art Gallery in New South Wales, Australia. This is a 2013 piece called Celestial Vessel number 7. And it was exhibited at the National Basketry Organization traveling exhibition called Rooted, Revised, and Reinvented, Basketry in America. And it's made out of stainless steel and has red cordage on the sides. And I'm just going to show you a few shots of how it was made. And I first started by cutting the individual panels and then pressing the silicone through the mesh. And here, this is in my studio where I connected those 4 panels to the top there. And there I am working on attaching the very top element to the 4 panels and then taking it down to complete it. And then I added a square at the bottom at the end. And I've also made mesh tables, and this one was in the Chengdu International Craft Biennale in 2015. I attached a steel bar stock to make the table strong enough to hold a glass tabletop. And the blue is powdered pigment that's with silicone pressed through. And I've also done installation with sheets of flame painted stainless steel mesh. And these are 5 screens that were hung in a solo exhibition I had at the Anchor Art Space in Anacortes. And I did this installation in 2013 at the Bingham Broomfield Arts Center. And you could walk in and among the screens to view them. And Daniil Bodine is the one that kind of helped organize that exhibition. So it was fun to go out there and work on, putting it up. And I repurposed the screens that were part of that exhibition in Detroit. And I turned them into three-dimensional pieces. And they were installed at the exhibit at the Bellevue Arts Museum in their metamorphosis exhibition. That was kind of part of their biennial series they were doing. And here I am at Timeless Textiles in Newcastle, Australia. I had a solo show there in 2016. I shipped everything out to Australia in one box, mailed through the post office. It was the biggest box you could send, and I think it was like 94 inches, the girth and the height and the width or something. But I was exactly with as big as you could do to ship through the post office. And in there I had several hanging screens and a bunch of small work, so I was able to just kind of spread out and make these wall installations. And this was part of the Timeless Textile Show. It all worked pretty well. I mean, I had enough stuff with me, and I didn't have to do anything there other than put it up. In 2016, I did a collab project with sculptor, glass artist Rick Allen. And I made mesh and wire forms, and Rick blew glass into them. And we exhibited them at the Smith and Valley Gallery in Edison. And this shows on the left one of the forms that I made for those pieces. And then that's the finished piece on the right after Rick blew into it and did his magic on it. It was fun working with Rick. And we also had a chance to exhibit again in 2018 as a featured artist at the Anacortes Arts Festival. And for that show, we made pieces that were sea life inspired. And here's another one of those collab sea life forms. And here's a kind of a spacey quid-like appearance, which was also part of our collaboration. And in 2019, I created a series of works I called Michelle's, and they were made out of stainless steel mesh with silicone that I mixed with powdered pigment. The inspiration was flora and sea life forms. And I exhibited this piece at the 2021 Cheongju International Craft Biennale. I've been in quite a few Cheongju shows. So I think there was only one that I wasn't accepted into in over the last 10 years or so. It was made out of, this was made at the start of COVID, and then I reworked it in 2021 when I added the copper leaves and the glass frit forms. And this is an installation view of a solo show I had at IE Gallery in Edison. The leaves are made out of copper mesh, and the insect wings are made out of stainless steel mesh. So those have been kind of my inspiration lately. I started like photographing insect wings and blowing them up and making them into pieces. And then I started also working with leaf forms and stuff, because I like the veining in the leaf. And this is a suspended piece that was in the IE exhibition. The body was made out of stainless steel, and the leaf form is made out of copper mesh. And this is an installation view of an exhibition that's up right now in Seattle at N Gallery, the N Gallery. It's a pop-up alternative space, and it's open Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 4. And it's up right now. Here's another view of a piece in that exhibition. I made 3 stainless steel panels for the project area at the Bellevue Arts Museum, and then I reinstalled them after it came down from Bellevue at the N Gallery. And this time I added copper ginkgo leaves to one of the panels. And here's 2 other panels that are in the N Gallery. And this is a new copper leaf piece that is in the Seattle exhibition. For the past year, I've been working with leaf forms inspired by leaves I gathered from Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia. I've been going back to Philly for regular visits since July of 2021 to visit Nancy. My late wife, Eve, Nancy and I all worked together at the Fleischer Art Memorial back in the day. Nancy and I reconnected in April of 2021 and got married at Laurel Hill Cemetery last April. Nancy was a tour guide there. And so, yeah, so anyway, I had a busy year. And here's my final slide. This past May, Nancy and I attended the opening reception of This Present Moment, Crafting a Better World at the Renwick Gallery. A collector bought Celestial Body, which is the piece I'm standing behind, and she donated it to the Renwick earlier this year. I made the piece back in 2005. I was fortunate enough to have it included in the exhibition, and it will be on display until next April. Celestial Body was in great company with Robert Sperry there on the back wall behind me. And next up for me this coming October is the show at Scott Milo Gallery here in my hometown of Anacortes. And I will be a featured artist there. The show will run from October 7th until the end of November. Thank you for tuning in.